The story begins with a final fight between the great hero and the demon king, both finally each other to. We then jump further in time with the transferred student Blade setting foot on the Rosewood Academy for Heroes, determined to make tons of friends and be just a normal guy. He easily makes friends with a normal group of guys and girls due to his bubbly personality, but then he comes across Ernest Flaming, the top student of the school, who starts scolding them because she thinks they are making a ruckus in the hallway. Not caring about her scary personality, Blade jumps to introduce himself. The girl starts ranting about the prestige of the school, but he lightly explains that he doesn't care about being a hero, he just wants friends. This upsets the girl for his lack of resolve, but he ignores her and asks her to guide him to the headmaster's office. She guides him against her will, and upon entering, she kneels down and tries to make the laid-back boy to do the same, as they are in front of the king. The man explains to them that he'll take the position of headmaster from now on, which makes the girl start talking about the honor she feels for being instructed by the king himself. However, the man excuses her out as he wants to talk to the boy in private, although this makes the girl upset at him and he is sure to blame it on the new headmaster. The king explains to Blade that he wants him to regain his powers as the great hero, but the boy refuses, as he just wants to be normal. Besides, he explains that there's no need for it now that the Demon King is gone, but the man doesn't really listen. Later, the hero goes to the advanced class where Ernest is in, as he tried for the lower classes, but was sent there anyway. Whatever the case, the girl doesn't believe it and thinks that he must have cheated, but the boy doesn't really care and starts introducing himself to everyone there. The poor redhead girl is trying to make him listen when he pats her head, shaming her and making her attack him. But when she sees that he calmly dodged her attack, he asks the instructor to allow her to test the boy's abilities. Used to the battle and not really thinking about it, he uses his Dragon series attacks to slice through an enchanted metal armor, but ends up sending everyone to flay Ernest's clothes and breaking one of the walls of the arena. Although he tries to say that he's just a normal boy, everyone looks at him upset. At lunch, he goes to sit with the red-haired girl, and although he tries to make his other friends to sit with them, they refuse, as the table they are in is exclusively for the girl. She explains that she's not being picked on, but rather feared. Although he doesn't understand why, they start eating, but the hero is blown away by the food and starts messily eating while the girl is trying to apologize for being rude about his entry at the school. The girl is getting flustered about it, but he brushes it off, saying that now that they are eating together, they are friends, which makes the girl blush. That night, she's rolling giddily in her bed for making her first friend when her sword starts shaking in the wall. She then remembers the first time she got it, the cursed sword of her family that even changed her hair from brown to red and tried to take over her body. Back in the present, she's barely able to control the demon within it, and this shows in the next day training as she fights so recklessly that even Tag Quiet Girl of the class, Sophie, fights against her to try to ease her. But seeing that her job is useless, she surrenders. Ernest then demands to fight against Blade, but before they can even start, her sword pulsates in her hands and the boy takes her to the infirmary and asks for the nurse to heal her, but the woman explains that her knowledge stops at curses. Then the girl wakes up terrified, asking if she did something awful, but after being reassured that she didn't, she tries to leave. The nurse tries to make her stay for a little, but it's no use. As they walk through the halls, she leans into Blade until they see people, then she stands on her own even when the boy says that she should lean on him because they are friends. That night, the boy infiltrates into the school's data to get info about the girl's sword, so the next morning he asks to talk to the girl in private. Although she's hesitant at first, she agrees when he mentions the secret of her sword. They meet at dusk at the arena, and he tells her what he knows about the sword, as she doesn't have full ownership, and to do so she should defeat the demon within, Asmodeus, to make it obey her. Although this scares the girl, as if she loses, the demon will take over her and do as he pleases, but he rewards her, saying that if that were to happen, he'll stop him. With the boy's support now, she tries to claim ownership of the sword, and the flames quickly consume her. Inside the flames, she faces Asmodeus, and he tries to intimidate her, making some of the fire try to glues outside, but Blade stops it, easing the girl inside of the flames and giving her the strength to fight. In the end, she comes out of the flames with no but she won the fight. The next day, she is changed, even letting her hair loose to show her new, more approachable personality. During practical training, Blade doesn't show much interest, nor does he make a big effort, as Ernest scolds him for disrespecting his companions. He notices something has changed, but can't tell what, which leaves the girl a little sad. However, she asks him to keep an eye on Sophie, a lonely girl that obeys every command she's given. He approaches her to explain the situation, and the only thing she asks is if it's a command. Although he struggles to think if it actually is or not, he ends up saying that he's there because he wants to help. The girl worriedly mentions that she only knows how to fight barehanded, so he resolves to teach her other means of fighting, although time is over quickly. Later that evening, they are training to cut through armors, and the boy explains to her how to channel her fighting spirit into the sword, which she leers to do quickly. After being praised for her quick advance, she asks if it would be enough to defeat Ernest, but the boy thinks it takes some more time to get to her level. The girl is quick to pin him to the ground, pointing out that that is stronger, and after he agrees with her, she leaves asking for him to teach her more. The next day, Blade is having some tea with the king to check up on him, even mocking him for not having very close friends. However, he mentions Sophie and the king tells him that her real name is Sophie Femto, the 12th copy of a human of the same name that was cloned in the artificial Great Hero Project. The project stood under the premise that if a great hero was able to exist, then they should be able to duplicate it. So they grabbed the most suitable human they could find and started experimenting until they reached Sophie. The boy stands up ready to attack the king, but the man explains that he has already taken care of the organization who did that, and he's the one who took Sophie in. She was treated like an object for so long that now she considers everything as a command. Blade runs away, and considering that it was somehow his existence fault that Sophie's life was taken away from her, he decides to make it his responsibility and bring it back to her. So asking questions to his classmates, he ends up at Ernest's door, asking what to do on a date. Although the girl first thinks that it's to invite her, and that's why she gives him advice, he quickly runs off to the girl's bathroom and asks the blue-haired girl on a date, which she agrees to. So the next day, the red-haired girl and the hero's two other friends start following them on their date, although they often stay behind to fix the mess that the other two have done, or because Ernest is trying something for the first time. At the end of the date, the two kids end up sitting next to a fountain, and Sophie asks why did he take her out. He explains that it's because they are Firens, and considering that friends don't lie to each other, he tells him what she is, showing that the artificial great hero's powers allow her to change the laws of physics and manipulate time, but she only can manifest them for then seconds and doesn't really have control over them. Since the girl has been honest with him, he confesses to be the hero, but he doesn't have his powers after the battle with the Demon King. However, he apologizes to her for being the reason she got those cursed powers. He sees the title of the great hero as a terrible burden that has ruined his life, even breaking to cry in front of her. She consoles him, explaining that she had the chance to visit the cities he saved, and he should take his pride on his achievements, but he can't. She says that that's Uck, but she takes her own pride in being made after him, which makes the boy reconsider his status, so he promises to her not to let his past bother him. And like that, they decide to share the secret of their identities, being that the bond they share. Some days later, the guys Blade befriended at Frist's sit down with them at Ernest's table, as they've been promoted to the advanced class. They start talking about the king bringing a magical creature for training when a loud noise is heard and the castle trembles. Still holding his breakfast, he goes to see what's happening and finds the guards trying to contain a dragon. He goes up to the creature and defeats it with a single punch, surprising everyone, although to him is no big deal, as the dragon is still young and probably was just scared of being dragged. He feeds the creature his food, although it's too tasty for her. However, he starts getting worried when people start whispering, and he tries to make it look normal, but no one is buying it. As he turns to defend himself, the dragon changes into a little blonde human girl, who immediately hugs the hero, calling him her father. Blade doesn't believe the little girl is the dragon until Sophie confirms it, which upsets the red-haired girl as she's still jealous of her. The little one clings to him, demanding to play, so he has no choice but to take care of her. That night, as he's taking a bath with her, she asks why did he name her Kyoushitsu, and he explains that was the name of a mighty warrior. Then the red-haired girl enters the bathroom to inform him about what she found. As a rare occurrence, dragons would shapeshift into the form of who defeats it, yet what happened with Q is not a normal thing, as there aren't many humans that can take down a dragon. After kicking his face when she saw the girl in the bathtub with him, the next morning Ernest is staring at him with disgust as he holds the girl in his and is feeding her. One of the girls, Claire, tries to feed her too, but as she sees humans as lower-class creatures, she scared her off. With the jealousy of a kid, she demands his full attention, even coming at him because he spends his time staring at adult females' bodies, which upsets the rest of the group and deem him guilty of being a... He ends up casted away during practice, and when he sees that Q came to see the practice, he invites her to train with him. She goes gladly, but the guys come to team up with Blade, and when he stops paying attention to her, she leaves. She ends up wandering around the more normal students' training, and although they try to befriend her, she runs off saying that they could never be a match for her. She stumbles with her father, and he takes her to have some dinner. He's watching her sleep when Ernest comes to talk to him. They go to the balcony, and he explains that dragons torment their children as soon as they are born, so that's why Q is attached to him for being the stronger specimen. However, she tries to show him that he can't continue to be her father, but he snaps saying that he doesn't want to leave her alone, and she can't ask for him to do that knowing how being alone feels like. Whichever is the case, she now feels better about him taking his parenting seriously, so she calls Sophie, who has been listening from the shadows, and the boy reasures her as well. But when he goes back to the room, Ku is nowhere to be found. He finds her at the rooftop looking at the two moons, something they used to ease her when she was alone at the wastelands. He asks her if she wants to have friends, but she explains that if dragons don't form packs, they assume their lives and alone, so she only needs him. The next day, he asks the king to babysit for him, but the man explains to him that the girl didn't like it and she ran away. Of course, this upsets the single father, but the king doesn't seem upset about it. However, he starts looking for her and ends up finding her in his room playing with some toys. Although at first it's cute that she has plushies to pretend to be his friends, he starts hearing her call different names, and she ends up using the towel that represents him to thank the other 108 students of the school for wanting to be his daughter's friends. This destroys him and he leaves the room. He ignores Ernest on his way, but when she hears him bang his head against the wall, she interferes to help. He tells her everything, destroyed to not be able to solve his daughter's problem. So she gets upset and tells him that he should trust them more and relay on them as well, just like he asked her to do. So the next day, they go to the lower classes training arena to beg for them to take Q down in a fight. The students are hesitant at first, but after the whole advanced class joins to kneel asking for their help, they accept. So the next day, they settle a fight with the king watching from above. Blade tells Q that he knows that when she was captured, she couldn't fight to her heart's content, so he allows her to do it now and take a bite of how strong humans can be. The fight is terribly rough, and although the kids are in clear disadvantage against a dragon, their training is paying off, and besides, having Ernest to guide them is also helping. The king and Blade watch the fight at the edge of their seat, and although the man claims the battle is over, the boy has faith in his friends, as soon as the battle started, Leonard, the red-haired girl simp, quickly dug up a trap for Q. With her powers, Sophie is able to get her still on the floor, while the rest of test students act as a conduct, do give their fighting spirit to the red-haired girl, as Asmodeus is quite tired from the fight. With all their powers combined in their effort to fire on the girl with the cursed sword shoots her a terrible attack that ends up to defeat her. The little dragon is sitting tired on the ground back in her human form, already thinking that her father will abandon her for being weak. But he comes up to her, explaining that he won't, as she didn't lose because she was weak, she just encountered someone stronger. After a slight scolding for her cockiness, the little girl asks the students to be her friends, and they accept right away. Now some days after the fight, the girls have become more used to Q's presence, even having her on their and feeding her. It's during lunch that Blade realizes that something has changed in Ernest, and although everyone tries to stop him from saying it, he ends up pointing out her game, which makes the girl cry and run away. 3 days pass by after that, and the girl remains locked up in her room. The boy is completely about it, and the girls try to explain to him that if he doesn't fix it, they might not get to be friends again. All of them go to the girl's room to talk to her, even having to pick the lock to get in, as she refuses to open up. When they make it inside, they can barely see her in the dark room doing what they think is crying. But after Q launches Hersaphalin, fighting the girl for something, they turn on the lights and see her eating out her. She explains that after the fight with the little dragon, her appetite started growing and the desserts were too tasty for her to ignore them. Blade asks her if they are still friends, and she explains that they are, she just didn't want him to see her like that. This seems to be enough for the guide, who tries to leave, but Claire and Jessica grab him, as if he leaves Ernest might end up being a helpless case. After a little struggle to cheer up the girl, he ends up promising to help her. And like that, the diet and training starts, but even when they put her in tight diet and got her on really rough exercises, the girl doesn't seem to lose weight, but rather gain it. Still, they don't give up, and neither does she. The next day, she takes Blade to a special arena, as she wants to try something new. She raises her sword and orders Asmodeus to use her flesh as power to defeat her enemy. The girls find them and are surprised to see Ernest like that, but they stay. Soon the fire of the sound slows down and they see Ernest be possessed by the demon. He asks who his enemy is, and the girl points out her body. Although he's taken a little aback, the demon complies, but the girl loses control and ends up being a little feral, even trying to attack one of her friends. The hero steps up to help, and once the fire is gone, the red-haired girl's body has gone back to normal. However, not many days after, they find her again in her room, stuffing herself with desserts, and she explains that if her method works, it's up for her to use it. Sometime after, the nurse warns Blade about his powers as he's been healing, but if he uses at least 30% of it, Claire stops Blade in the halls to introduce him to one of her friends, Maria. He immediately recognizes the girl for her clumsy behavior during the trainings and fight against Q, which ashames her, but she doesn't deny it. However, the girl asks him to kill her, which worries everyone because soon after they are holding a meeting in their usual table. She explains that she needs him to kill her when she loses control over her powers, and is also quick to mention that she's a night demon. She explains that there's something darker within her and ever since the fight against the little dragon, she hasn't been able to hold it back anymore. Blade understands, as working as a conduit for energy might have awoken that Abast, so he accepts to help her, being followed by everyone, even Q, who calls her a friend now. They move on to one of the arenas, even setting a magical barrier just in case. The boy wants her to release her powers to face them, but the girl is not sure. So having experience with it, Ernest goes up to her to tell her to trust the hero, as he has already been able to stand something similar. The girl gives in and starts getting rid of the magical objects that hold her powers down. Once she's done, her powers release within and her new body raises from the ground. The demonic crest in her head claims her title. She's the new Demon King. Everyone tries to fight her, but her powers are unmatchable, and everyone is taken down. The hero joins in, trying not to hurt the girl at first, but after he's sent flying in the air, he takes Shish's sword out and fights. Yet the girl is able to destroy his sword from one single attack. Ernest comes to give him her sword, and although at first the Demon King laughs, she's quickly defeated by the great hero's powers. However, he has used more power that he will fall unconscious as well. He wakes up at the infirmary and the nurse scolds him as he asking for him to never scare her like that again. He asks for Maria and she confirms that she's alive, but when he go to see her, she hasn't gone back to her nerdy self, but rather stays in her demonic form covered by a school uniform. The woman confirms that she and Maria are two separated personalities, but she doesn't have a name. The group goes to confront the king and he explains that he was aware of Maria's situation, with her late mother a human and her father, although fate unknown, is the former Demon King. The group goes to check up on her, and as the king decided to set her free because with her powers, cued she's not a threat, they have no choice but to just keep an eye on her. In the end, they call her Mao, a short name for the nickname everyone has been calling her. Once Mao and her clique of girls leave, Claire wonders where her friend is hiding if they are different personalities. That night, Mao goes to take Blade on a date and drags him to watch Tattoo Moons, thing that she couldn't see because Maria would often face the floor. She explained that she's gained consciousness something about 5 years ago, yet this doesn't matter to a magical creature. Not really sure about how does she feel in the new body experience, she ends up coming to the conclusion that she won't leave the academy until she kills him. However, in all that mess of feelings, she has the hypothesis that she's attracted to him, and she tells him, but they don't do much about it because they simply don't know what to do about it. Blade suggests that they fight, but he's not at his full strength and she can't take off one of the seals she has because deep down in her mind, Maria refuses. He asks about Maria and she explains to him that she was born out of her suffer for being cast away from society, her father's abandonment, and her mother's silly hopes. Mao was what gave form to all of her feelings. Some days later, one of Maria's friends, Eliza, comes to tell them that the necklace is not a seal, but rather a recording device that could hold a message from the person who gave it to her. She warns her that if they manage to see the message, it could bring the girl back, but still she decides to proceed. As they are trying to unseal it, Claire is sad not to be able to befriend both girls as one should perish for the other to survive, but Mao eases her saying that regardless of who takes over the body, she's sure that she could befriend any of them. She opens the locket that was originally Maria's mother's and a hologram of her father is projected. He talks to his wife, explaining that he couldn't take her with him to defeat this enemy because she's pregnant. He informs the woman that he's already chosen names and to tell their baby when they are able to understand that he's... Yet he promises to keep loving them endlessly, making the girl cry. Inside of her, she gives her hand to her other self, urging her to take the step up and at least fight back. Outist, she explains that they are fighting, but even crying. She rushes them to call their friend's name, which they end up doing. The other girl wakes up in her body, crying her eyes out. Yet we're able to see time after Blade and Maria facing each other in battle, when the girl allows Mao to come out as she decided that coexisting with her demon counterpart was better. While going through the town, Blade, Sophie, Q, and Ernest come across a stuck wagon. Where they look to give help, they find the Centaur Iona who had fought alongside the boy when he was the great hero. Once they take it to the delivery place, it turns out to be the king who had asked for it, also informing the kids that the Centaur would be teaching them from now on. To warm up, prove herself to the class, the horse girl strikes against multiple blocks of God's steel, a metal that was thought to be indestructible, but the girl got them melting in seconds. Introducing herself, she lets slip that she was within the great hero's party, raising the guys questions about how someone like her knows Blade. Later at the girls' bathrooms, the boy is bathing Q when he hears the girls taking advantage of her old friend as they clean her body, scratching the good spots to take out of her some info about how she met the boy and how was he like when he was younger. Then he enters the bathroom to stop them, but the red-haired girl makes a fuss about him being there, although yes eases her explaining that he has the mind of a 5-year-old, flashing the boy to prove it. Yet the girls don't give up and the Centaur ends up explaining how she met the boy when he was actually 5. He used to be so feral that thinking she was a simple horse, tried to bite her, leaving her a scar. She also tells them how she trained so hard that she was able to make it into the great hero's party, even allowing him to ride in her back. But when he didn't allow her to join him in his battle against the Demon King, she started doubting herself and lost the capability of training harder to become better. Some days later, the boy and Ernest are hitting the town for some shopping and arguing about what to get Iona when a simurgh, one of the 4 continental sacred birds, is seen overflying the town. Although they are known for not attacking human, the second one attacks a wagon and flies off. Whichever the case, the hero is sure that the king has something to do with it. So they go to confront him. At first he denies it, but after they point out that Iona is bringing a similar wagon, he explains that the woman brought him the egg of the simurgh couple. The kids immediately freak out, yet the man explains that those eggs require 2 special conditions to hatch, but as the parents are new to make nests, the egg was at risk. However, this is just an excuse, as he also thought it could be great training for the kids. The girls already scolding him when he lays on their shoulders the quest of making the egg hatch safely, as its due date is the next day. As the sunset light and a great height is needed for the baby to be born, they plan to elevate the egg to the highest tower at sunset. But for that they need to distract the parents. So after a good motivational speech to his companions, the kids start laying baits in the evacuated town and fighting the parents. Fight is wrought, but they are able to make it to sunset, yet the Evis stops midway and one of the parents approaches. The guys send Blade while they take care of the parents, which makes him have PTSD about his lost comrades, but they reassure him, and he starts running up the wall of the academy. It's hard and he's about to give up when Dione, who's been instructed not to help, comes to his rescue and lets him ride her back while running up. Once the egg is in the nest, they wait for it to hatch, but the other parent comes flying to them and the king takes responsibility. It turns out that his simmer once saved his life and he's been trying to repay the favor ever since, but upon seeing him, the beast seems even angrier. It sends the king flying, but before it can attack, Sophie stops time for brief seconds to allow Blade strike the animal with a simple attack to gain time. Finally, the egg hatches and 2 babies are born from it. They immediately start imprinting in the boy, taking him as their father, so now the party has 2 new additions. Some days later, him and Ernest are flying on the birds, with the girl terrified of it and the real parents looking at her babies from the nest. Sometime after, we see Blade walking through the halls of the academy, sword full of flashes of plenty fallen friends plague his mind. Then, Sophie faces him, saying she had always wanted to fight against him at his 100, but even when she gives her best, she fails and the boy saves her. After that, he communicates with the king, asking for him to stop his tricks. It turns out that they are inside of a VR machine that Ted King brought for them, but Blade thinks it's gruesome that things are so realistic. So the man changes the setup to be a fairy tale-like kinda land and informs the students that hasn't been yet that the one who stands the last will be able to use the device for fun. On the other side of the map, Ernest is going berserk against her classmates, completely enjoying the and looking for the hero. Before she gets to him, we see Yes and Claire fighting against their 2 friends. The boys are bragging about them not being able to defeat them before, but when Teffer's girl asks why they don't want to lose to them, the boys blush and get distracted, allowing the girls to eliminate them. The red-haired girl appears in that moment, and as he promised before, the hero stops her, the other 2 in the process. Now once out of the machine, he goes to the computer to set a terrible world full of monsters and traps, to plug the king in and instruct the woman who's always accompanying him not to unplug him until nighttime as a punishment for putting them through that. The next morning during breakfast, Clay and Casson haven't gotten over the fact that they lost, so they don't sit next to them. Ernest asks how did that happen, and Blade mentions that it's due to them feeling way too comfortable with their skills, so much that they didn't develop them further. Although it's a harsh thing to say, he assures the girls that it's for their own good. Later, they see Dione building something the king has asked for, and when they come inside, they are greeted by a huge mixed spring bath. Everyone is comfortable in their but the red-haired girl is wearing a towel because she's ashamed of not doing so. However, she's quickly forced by the king, showing off like gods send him to the earth to take it off as the springs are meant to use with no. Being a mixed bath, the girls remind him that they need to wear, and the man is up with that because like old man he is, he rathers watching girls in if he can't see them with no clothes. The boys support him in his rampage, but the maiden quickly knocks him out and apologizes for him. Meanwhile, Yes and Claire go to tell the boys to get over it, as it wasn't a big deal, but they can't stop thinking about it. To make matters worse, Claire apologizes for winning, hoping that that would fix things, but it only makes the boys leave ashamed. Later on, they have a meeting with the hero, who tries to take them out of their frustration, but the boys explain that they are ashamed because they like the girls and don't want them to view thee as weak. Then Ku enters the room and explains that females like strong males, so being trained by her father should do the trick. Meanwhile, the girls are having a sleepover as they are worried about the boys not being able to overcome it and think about just skip practice, so they become stronger than them, but Sophie and Ernest are against it. The Q enters the room with the same advice, but the red-haired girl has another idea. After days of training, the 2 pairs confront each other in the VR war with promises of no hard feelings, but even after being trained by the hero, the girls win thanks to the abilities they learned from the other girls. However, the boys are not about their defeat and thanks the girls for not taking it easy on them. Then Ernest goes to scold them for being ashamed of being weaker than the person they love as she glances back to Blade, as it would be too much to ask for some. Some weeks later, the girls find a little robot outside the campus as if it was looking for someone. When asked, the machine projects an image of Blade, so the girls take it with him, but he destroys the machine without further thought. As the girls scold him and he explains that it's a guardian, the remains of the machine scan Ernest. So the next day, an android-like girl is waiting for them. She tries to attack the boy, but he's much faster and ends up her body without hesitation. However, that evening the girl's body is repaired and right where they left it. Before he could destroy it again, the red-haired girl stops him and the android girl informs him that she's got the command to destroy him. Claire jumps to action and tries to befriend the girl, immediately calling her Iona after seeing her number series on her clothing, but she's not interested in nothing that isn't the boy. She insists that the girl joins them for classes, and if she wants to defeat Blade, they all can come with a plan together. In the end, Eliza joins the plan, and Iona explains that her vendetta against Blade is because he trespassed the area where she was guarding, making her mother scold her, not counting the amount of times he teared apart her body. Although the wording makes the girl take him as a... The girls siding with the android make him upset, and he promptly leaves, being followed by Sophie, who understands that he only trespassed the library she guards due to his duties as the great hero. Besides, he knows that the Guardians keep to her sealed separated from their bodies, so it's not like he was killing her. However, this makes the girl question him about what would he do if she had her soul within her. Back at the girls' meeting, Eliza comes up with the plan to fuse Iona's soul with her body, so he would force Blade to have an actual battle where the girl might have a chance to win, calling it a standalone mode. So the next day, the whole school is gathered at the arena. Before fighting, the girl informs him about her new status, giving the boy no time to trace a plan. He tries to direct his fighting spirit just with his hands, but it isn't strong enough. Before he can grab his sword again, the girl strikes at him badly. She gives him the chance to keep fighting or surrender, and he chooses the latest, surprising everyone and giving the girl a standing ovation. Although things went well for her the next day, despite being able to eat, Iona doesn't feel hungry, and the group urges her to share her feelings. It turns out that the standalone mode came with the need of disconnecting from Mother, the mother computer, so now she's been fired and has fallen into an existential crisis. Feeling lost without a master is served, she tries to ask for Blade to be her new master, but the boy refuses. She then explains that without a master, the countdown for her destruction will start, as every Guardian has it in case they go berserk. Eliza checks it, and although they have time, Blade agrees to take the role to make things easier. Now the following days are full of Iona serving him and looking after him, although it makes him feel like he's lost his freedom. To make matters worse, Sophie is also angry about it, as she feels like the android is stealing her expressionless/robotic personality. Both girls then decide to fight for that spot in the boy's life, so the following day is full of the girls trying to establish dominance, but coming up with the same ideas. They all end up in Blade's room. Him and Q are off to sleep while the girls watch them to soothe him. Once they think he's asleep, Iona mentions that she has been having fun with that little competition, and she doesn't want it to end. Besides, they can bond thanks to the connection they feel with the boy. None of them really understands their feelings about it, but Sophie takes the first step, asking the android to call her by her name without the honorific. The next morning, everyone is happy to see them getting along, but the hero asks to see the countdown, and it hasn't stopped. It wasn't a certainty that it would stop with a human master, but the girl assures him that it certainly slowed it down. They only have 20 hours left, so they allow Iona to ask for whatever she wants, and she chooses to stay with them until her final seconds. With that terrible fate ahead, the school throws a party for the girl. She asks Sophie if it is okay for her to enjoy it, and the girl nods. Towards the end of the night, a protection dome covers the android, and the girls go to her, everyone's eyes full of tears. Iona tries to give a mature and calm goodbye speech, but in the end confesses that she's terrified and asks for help. They all apologize, and she begs for them not to forget her. However, the never arrives, and Blade, who's been missing the whole party, explains that he went to beg Mother to take the girl back, allowing her to keep living. During a special event at the academy, Blade defeats everyone mercilessly. The last one in foot is Leonard, but Ernest's repeated indifference towards him, in contrast with her devotion for the other boy, makes him doubt himself, and he ends up defeated. Sometime after the fight, Maria approaches him. She wants to defeat the hero and feels bad for the boy, who also wants to defeat him to make the red-haired girl to even look at him. So they decide to cheer for the other in their way to win over the prodigy boy of the school. However, Eliza interrupts, as she thinks that cheering isn't enough, so they make a comedy full of Blade's closest friends to defeat him. Although all of their motives are different, their goal is the same: make the boy lose. So they come up with a variety of plans, each of them taking turns to attack the boy. Yet he defeats them effortlessly. They try with frontal attacks, surprise attacks, attacks on his sleep, and all the times they are defeated. So after the god knows which meeting of the committee, they remember that they only have to make him give up, and the only time they could do it was when Iona's life was in danger, so they come up with a special plan. During the nurse's class, Leonard, Clay, and Karim dress as and try to take the woman as a but they are faced with some problems. First, the boy doesn't feel like he needs to step up. Second, upon discovering that they could be rescued by Blade, all the girls are fighting to be the In the middle of their struggle, he asks Q what does mean, as he doesn't know. But neither does the girl, so she suggests that it might be non-perishable food, which confuses the boy even more. In the end, the nurse leaves and all the girls play as but the boy still doesn't understand what's going on. He understands that they might try to eat them, so they all decide to go with that train of thought, but are faced with another problem. Despite their disguises, he knows who they are. Even so, they don't abandon character and keep with the play, taking it as far as Karim grabbing Claire's and Ernest's. But the girls are capable enough to defend themselves. Clay asks for him to give up, and Leonard goes to him to explain their plan, but the boy explains that that time worked because it was for real. So given that clue, the boy takes the red-haired girl and sword to her throat, thing she gladly allows. They are all pressuring the hero about his next move, but he simply applicates a penetrating force attack to break the boy's weapons and clothes. He sees the matter solved, but the group won't admit defeat, so they try one last time using their most powerful forms, and yet they are defeated once again, though it was a simple play pretend game for Blade. However, the group holds many other committee meetings explaining that they won't give up just yet. While walking through the cafeteria, Ernest and Blade see some students celebrating a girl's birthday, though the boy doesn't really know what it's like as he doesn't know when his birthday is. So the girls meet up with Iona to ask for his birthday, but the woman explains that it's not certain. They found him some years ago in what should be a month ahead, so he should be 17 by that day. She comments that he was named Blade because they found him with a sword in his hands. The girls decide to use that day as his birthday and start brainstorming about what to get him. The red-haired girl suggests that they should get him his favorite dish, but the others are not sure. However, the king interrupts to say that it might be a good idea and he can help with it. Sometime later, the man takes the whole school seemingly to the royal pantry, an open unexplored world beneath the academy. The door is closed and he explains that they won't open until they consume a certain amount of calories, so they'll have to hunt in that world full of dangerous beasts and plants. Blade thinks that the task is way too much and pointless, but the rest jumps in right after they are given the task. They leave their clothes and converting into a more primitive lifestyle, hunting with traps and dressing with cloths instead of actual clothing. The boy doesn't play along, but doesn't stop it either. At night, after their campsite is insulated and secure, he goes to take a bath at some hot springs and Ernest follows. She asked about his life before and he explains that he's always fought to survive, so becoming stronger was a must. She caresses the scars on his chest and is about to say something, but Claire and Yes interrupt before she can go forward. So time later, their civilization has advanced, even having a city in Tive reach almost a half of their first task. However, seeing that it might be easier for them than he thought, the king gives them a bunch of flyers and asks for them to collect the ingredient in those. So now the group is forced to face beast-like vegetables in weird ways just to get them right. Again, Blake is not fully coming along, but everyone is all fired up and are decided to get it right, so he doesn't stop them. After collecting almost every ingredient, the kids join for a feast, and the king explains that they've achieved to get the population to be about 1/10 what it was remaining like that for a couple years. Although the guys worry about them going extinct, he explains that if they could go extinct, they wouldn't have so many troubles to keep them at bay. So the next day, the group faces the last ingredient in the huge central tree, the most fertile zone around. Soon the Beast King, a minotaur-like creature, appears before them. They are ready to face it head-on, but a much larger beast kills it and stands before them, Behemoth. Although the creature is far larger and powerful, the king urges the kids to take him instead of the now-late Beast King. And although once again Blade is not into the fight, the rest of the group jumps right in. The battle is terrible and the creature far too powerful, to the extent that they need to use Leonard's huge shield. Their Blade realizes that he needs to make a special attack and asks Mao for help, as he would need at least 30% of his power and is only at half. They hold hands, and to make it easier, she kisses him. They share their fighting spirit, and using the same attack he used with the Demon King, they are able to cut the monster in half. The hero falls exhausted, and not at least, and seems to lose consciousness. He wakes up some time later at the infirmary, and the nurse informs him that his powers have gone up to 18%, probably due to his better habits. She sends him to have lunch, and when he enters the cafeteria, he's received by a huge surprise party fought him. The girls explain the date they use and sit him in front of his gift, a bowl of his favorite dish made with ingredients from the royal pantry. The king joins them as well and is surprised to see the boys shake after the first bite. He explains that he was once told that men shouldn't cry, but the man eases him, saying that manly tears in moments like these are a must. And like that, the boy breaks sobbing while eating his beloved gift. As Blade is teaching Karim and Clay one of his moves, Sophie approaches. The boys cheer for her to try to learn the move, but she denies and simply does it. They are surprised by it, but the hero explains that that is how it should look. Right after that, the girl tries to attack him and the real Sophie interferes. Being defeated after a little struggle, the fake one leaves. We then see her arriving to an abandoned barn where we see other clones of the girl being addressed by numbers in French. The one that just arrives explains her sisters that she's learned, and by kissing them, she transfers them the information. Some days go by and the girls seem to have been attacking periodically. Today is Quatra's turn. As the class trains and Eliza develops with encapsulated fighting spirit, the girl approaches and Blade asks her what does she want to learn. The girl shamelessly mentions that she wants to learn how to make babies, but when he doesn't react, she asks for him to teach her how to kill him. They fight a little and she complains that she's not learning for obvious reasons. She then places his hand on her and asks for him to kill her instead. Sophie interrupts and the girl withdraws. During lunch, the group goes over the girl's motives and Ernest is taking things in a really laid-back way, almost like the hero. One of the normal girls suggests that they seem to be trying to kill him for real, but this doesn't sync with the guys for a while. When they finally realize, the duplicated girl stumbles with her food, surprised that they have just figured it out. but promises to protect the boy until the end before leaving. We then see an abandoned lab where the clone girls are spending their time. A man calls for them and asks for them to kill a hero, so they can prove that their project did have a meaning and it wasn't just because. That night, Sophie goes to check on Blade and Iona surprises her. She assures her that she'll take care of the boy with her life, and before leaving, the other girl does the same. She goes out of the dorms and finds Yoon at the entrance. She tries to convince the girl to give up, as the artificial hero project ended up with her as a last subject, so any modifications that got after it don't follow the principal goal. But the girl doesn't. Sophie mentions that the modifications should have affected their bodies, and she confirms it, saying that their lifespan is shorter. They fight for a little, and Sophie has the other girl pinned on the floor, but can't come to punch her, so she just lets her go. Sometime after that, Blade and the group are in the VR world and they come across Sync. The girl starts pursuing him and manages to destroy him there, leaving soon after Please. But not much time goes by when Sho comes back, angrier than before for being tricked. Do joins her, and they start pursuing the hero across the whole academy. Ernest and a group of girls of the normal class are waiting to ambush them, but their attack doesn't work and the red-haired girl has to step up. She manages to take back one of the girls, but the other comes to punch her right in the face, and Blade has to come back to help her, taking the girl down with magic. However, this is not enough, and combining their powers, the girls cast a wormhole. They wait the 10 seconds for their powers to stop, but the wormhole won't disappear, so he's forced to save 2 girls before they are swallowed. Sophie comes to the rescue and makes a smaller wormhole to eat the first one, but it drains her power, and she wakes up later at the infirmary with the boy by her side. He asks for her to tell him about the girls, so she explains that they were created just like her, but with different modifications, as 10 artificial great heroes were created to defeat the original. Unlike her, those girls received neurological modifications, so they wouldn't be suited for the academy, much against his desire of befriending them. She starts crying, worried and scared, and the only thing he can do is to hug her. But later we can see her empty hospital bed. The group goes to complain to the king about Sophie's withdrawing from the academy, but he explains he can't keep her there if she wants to leave. Seeing that he's hurt like a father, the kids promise to bring her back, but he warns them about the reason why she didn't ask for their help. The only way to stop the girls is them for real. He asks for the kids to consider the information and think about it truthfully before doing an eating, so by dawn, Blade only finds Q, Iona, and Mao with him. However, when he's leaving the academy, they find the rest of the group waiting for him. All of them want to help their friend. They divide in the different hideouts of the girls, but it's Ernest who finds Sophie. She tries to ease her, but the girl mentions that there's something they need to know. Once all of them are gathered there, she tells them about their past, although they are not able to link the great hero with Blade. The girl's speech is cut by the red-haired girl, who tells her that she doesn't need to sacrifice herself for this, as they are all going to help, and the hero entrusts Elias with coming out with a plan. He doesn't want to kill them, he thinks there should be other way. In the abandoned laboratory, the clone girls are already starting to fall apart, but their willpower remains strong. Duve and Quater bring Yoon a letter from the group, and although they know it's a trap, they attend the meeting anyway. At the academy arena, the advanced class awaits for the girls, all of them nervous for the outcome for things. Eliza reminds Blade that the plan is for him to endure the attacks of the girls as much as possible, while they look for who programmed them and force that person to give them the tools to reprogram them. So when the girls arrive, the fight begins. It's endless, and 1 against 5 is definitely not fair. But the girls seem to drop one after the other, barely able to even fight. Ernest becomes nervous, she hates having to be sitting, while the boy is risking his life, but Yes eases her, showing her the capsules and tells her that there's still something that they can do. The girls start using their artificial great hero's powers, but they don't last long. However, the attacks are powerful and the boy still needs the capsules. Yet, when it's the red-haired girl's turn to throw a capsule at him, one attack interferes and Sophie goes to rescue him, allowing him to use her powers to take down the next girl. Time comes and Yoon is the last one on foot. She uses a powerful attack and Blade responds with Ernest's fighting spirit. After the fire stops, the sun starts setting and Yoon explains that her time is up. Then, to everyone's horror, her arm falls out, as clones only can live up to 14 days, being right now and their due date. Bald starts panicking and asks Eliza to do something. The girl briefly explains that they found the lab. She's even surprised that they could last 14 days. There's no time for her to come up with something. She don't have the knowledge to fix them, and what's worse, their master has been long before these girls were even born. Stating that Yoon hasn't used her artificial hero power, Sophie comes up with an idea and asks the boy to gather all her sisters. He asks for them to keep living so they could try to defeat her, and feeling joyful about it, they comply to Sophie's orders. Yoon uses her power and canalizing it, the boy is able to make their souls and minds join all together within the girl on his arms. Sometime later, he wakes up at the infirmary with his arms full of bandages. Yoon, leading the body, comes to check on him. The 6 girls seem to coexist calmly within one body, and Sophie is allowed to be the main personality. Sometime after, we see the group fighting against a huge creature that the king brought as training. But as expected, the creature is not the one he asked for, but one much more powerful. The kids struggle to defeat it, but as always, Blade is able to kill it in one go and then go back to his breakfast.